r/AskReddit. What is the stupidest thing you thought as a child? I thought burglary was a profession, and that criminals' shifts started when the sun set, and they'd be on all night robbing houses. To calm my fears, I would put my blinds up a little, lay down in a pile of stuffed animals and freeze, staring out the window. My thought was I'd look like a doll, and if a burglar saw me through the window, they wouldn't realize I was a human, and then I could get up and call 911 when they looked away. I fell asleep in that stuffed animal pile every night for 2 years. I did that too, but I was hiding from the aliens. Not me, but my son. He didn't want us to get a new TV because he liked the shows on the old one. To be fair, my parents have said similar things about their computer and email. When I was about 6 I used to think sex was just a hug, because my parents called it a special cuddle and I knew it had something to do with the balls. So I thought when a man and women hugged the balls went through the man's skin and into the woman's body, then either came back or grew. I'm a little fuzzy on that detail, but I concluded that if two men hugged they would just swap balls. So I punched myself in the balls, went and hugged my brother for the ultimate prank. I asked him, do your balls hurt? And he was like, no. So realized I had just punched myself in the balls for no reason. I told him about this the other year and we laugh about it, but he is still very confused. That the eject button on my dad's car would send me flying through the roof. My dad told me that Tiger Woods had a brother called Lion Woods. I thought catching on fire as an adult is common because of all the fire safety in elementary and them beating stop, drop, and roll into our heads. When we were little my twin sister was convinced that chicken, beef, etc. was produced by vacuuming the meat out of the living animal. The animal would then walk around all wobbly and meatless until more meat grew back. Sex was just making out with no clothes on. I feel like we all thought this at one point. I noticed that I was able to jump off of the playground and land on my feet and be perfectly fine. So my child mind immediately decided I was a superhero and could land from any height and be perfectly fine. I went to my friend's house, jumped off his roof, and the next thing I remember is crying until my mom picked me up. My address was 25,029. My parents told me that represented my mom's age, 25, and dad's age, 29, when they got married, and the 0 was for how many kids they had at the time. As a little kid I thought that rule, mom's age #OF kids, dad's age, applied to all home addresses. I would always see houses with addresses like 05785 or something, and wonder how a 5-year-old married an 85-year-old and already had 7 kids. I believed this for far longer than I'm happy to admit. I thought that every song that played on the radio was being performed somewhere live, and when you turned up the volume the singer would sing louder at his/her venue. Oh, this but double for me, because my grandfather was a radio presenter when I was a kid. So I'd hear my papa on the radio and know he was in a room somewhere. I thought there was a band there with him cranking out the hits. It didn't help that in true grandfather style he encouraged the belief. I thought that oral sex was a slang term for French kissing, and therefore anal sex must mean two people standing back to back, rubbing butts. I thought oral sex was talking about sex. Not dirty talk, but more of a discussion about whether or not the people involved would have sex. Then once they had sorted out the question and negotiated stuff like whether or not kissing or hugging would be involved, they would either have sex or arrange to have it a bit later on. I figured people did this because sex sounded very weird anyway and I totally couldn't see the point, so it would make sense that they make sure the other person wanted to as well. I thought that anytime any woman went to the hospital, it was to have a baby. My 98-year-old great-grandmother was in the hospital and all I wanted to know is when the baby was gonna get here. I thought people died by blowing the candles on their 100 years party. I just thought that people died when they turned 100. My mom knew this person who was either 98 or 99, and so I said, so she's either going to be 99 or she's going to die, and my mom agreed. I couldn't fathom how thermoses worked. People told me that they keep hot things hot and cold things cold, but I was like, how in the truck does it know whether the thing inside it is hot or cold so as to keep it that way? Took me many a year to figure that out. I used to believe I could save up my hots and my colds to use them later. For example, if it was really hot outside, I would whisper, "Save up all these hots." Then when I would get cold, I would summon the extra hots by whispering, "Give me all my hots," and it was supposed to make me warmer. I thought I could trap good weather in a bottle and release it later. Except I didn't have a bottle, I had an empty Tic Tac container. So I filled it partway with tepid water, obviously, opened it up on a perfect day, got all that good weather in, and saved it. And I released it several months later, and I swear the weather turned nice. I'm sure this is pretty common, but I used to think before color TV everything was black and white. I remember as a child asking my nan what it was like when they saw color for the first time. Asking mine that question would result in a racist tirade. I was told that God lived up in the sky. For some reason, the highest thing I could imagine was the pipe sticking out of the neighbor's roof. So I thought God lived in the pipe. I have a friend who teaches. A kid asked her, when they give money at church, how does a church get it to God? My friend jokingly said they tie it to a balloon and let it float up to heaven. The kid said he was going to ask her pastor if she could watch next time they did it. My friend teaches high school juniors. I used to think that the money offering collected at church would be put into a huge cannon to be shot up to heaven for Jesus. I thought the preacher burned it every Sunday evening and the smoke carried it up to God. Every year the trees in our yard would lose their leaves. Every year my dad raked up the leaves and put them into yard waste bags. With me so far, kid logic dictated that my dad kept the bags of leaves in the shed so he could glue them back onto the trees next spring. I did not grow up to become an arborist. I used to think black people couldn't speak. Bear with me here. I grew up in a very white neighborhood. The only black people I interacted with were my deaf foster sister and her deaf friends from her school for the deaf. So, in my short life, white people could hear and spoke with their voices. Black people couldn't hear and spoke with their hands. ASL. So naturally the first time a black person spoke out loud to me, I was like 4. My response was to freak out and yell, "You can talk." I also grew up in a very white neighborhood and had learned about segregation, but not the whole civil rights movement yet. I thought that segregation was still a thing. Made sense since there weren't any black people in my class at school, at my church, or like the first year I did karate. I got so upset when a little black boy came to my karate class because I wanted to be friends with him, but wasn't allowed to talk to him or use the same spaces as me. I don't think I understood that bathrooms were divided by gender, or that the reason for 2 water fountains was literally just one for adults and one for kids. My mom shut me up real quick. I had a fear of telescopes as I thought if I wasn't careful with them, I'd be abducted by aliens. I used to play The Sims a lot. I thought that Harriet Tubman created an actual underground railroad, a locomotive train running underground, that transported the slaves to freedom. I thought Santa hated me because he didn't give me presents on Christmas. I'm Jewish and my parents didn't want me to be that kid who told his classmates that Santa doesn't exist. So I ended up believing in Santa until I was about 8 when I saw 2 mall Santas get into a fight in the parking lot of the mall. I figured out Santa wasn't real when I got a She-Ra crystal castle and no She-Ra doll. I tried to jam a Barbie in the castle and broke it, followed by an epic meltdown and the castle being taken away. I told my parents Santa wasn't real because he wouldn't have made that mistake. My powers of deduction peaked when I was 4. I thought the do not pass or no passing signs on the side of the road meant you couldn't pass that sign. So back in the 60s, there was a period where people were buying baby alligators as pets. Seemed like every store everywhere had baby alligators. Well, people quickly tired of them and started flushing them down the toilets. In big cities, news stories about alligators living in the sewers proliferated. We lived close to New York City and frequently went there to visit family. My 2 older brothers convinced me, I was about 7 that the alligators in the sewers would get me if I wasn't careful. Having seen the news stories already, I totally believed this. So every time we went to New York City, I would circle around every sewer grate. I can only imagine what my parents thought of this. Good times. I was born one day before my dad's birthday, and I remember always being confused when I was younger as to why he was older than me when my birthday was before his. Young me didn't understand that years also existed. When I was a child I always gave my mom my birthday and Christmas money. She used to take the money and transferred the same amount of money from her bank account to mine. I thought she laid the money into the CD player of the computer and the money would wander through the wire to the bank. I thought it was illegal to have the inside lights on in the car while someone was driving. A lot of people thought this. Our parents just didn't like us having the lights on while they were driving. Seriously. As a child I thought actors would really die in movies. And though, how stupid is this? They can only be in one film in their life. That there was someone who sat behind a couple hundred computer screens and controlled every traffic light in the city. I wasn't the sharpest bulb in the bag of hammers. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe for more.